Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. A few people might join us during the course of the presentation, and that's okay. My name is Brian Manning. I'm the Manager of Communications at Surrogacy. This is our first German webinar. We just had our webinar for residents of the Netherlands a couple of months ago, so this is our second webinar ever, and we're really excited to share a little bit about surrogacy and how the surrogacy process works for German intended parents. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You should see a chat window on the right. If you have any questions or any problems during the course of the webinar, you can type those in, and we'll get back to you and try to help you out. There's also a question section. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer them at the end of the webinar. But if anything comes up while we're talking, you can go ahead and type those in, and we'll try to get back to you. We're going to start today's webinar with Dean Hutchison. He's an attorney here at Surrogacy. We're going to start with Stacy Schulman, who's the program manager at Surrogacy. She's going to give an overview of our program options. Then we're going to have Dean Hutchison, one of our attorneys, talk. And then we're going to have Mandy, who's a German attorney, take over, and she'll talk a little bit about the process on the German end of things, the legal process. She'll do her part in German. And then we have Frank and David, who are parents through our program, who are going to talk about their own personal experience. We'll begin with a little bit of history of surrogacy and background on our organization. Talk about the difference between gestational surrogacy and egg donation. Explain a little bit about how our process works. Go over our different programs. Then Dean will take over and talk about the U.S. side of the legal work. He'll explain a little bit about costs and insurance. And then we'll have Mandy talk about the German legal work. And then we'll have Frank and David take over. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stacy Schulman. She's our program manager here at Surrogacy.
So as Brian said, I'm Stacy Schulman. I'm a program manager here at Surrogacy. And I just wanted to talk a little bit today about who we are and sort of what we have to offer from a program standpoint. In addition to being the program manager, I actually work as a coordinator with intended parents from when they sign on with us all the way through to the birth of their child or children. Surrogacy is one of the oldest surrogacy agencies in the United States. We have a 100% success rate for our international intended parents. We have several different programs to offer, including a guarantee program. Which includes, a return for your funds if you do not achieve pregnancy. We also have an unlimited IVF program, which is similar to that. And these are through several different medical facilities that we have partnerships with. We have international expertise. We've worked with intended parents from all backgrounds. We also have a SPAR program, which is for intended parents who are HIV positive. One of the differences for surrogacy is that we really promote known egg donation. And what that means is that your egg donor would know you and you would know them, and you would be able to contact them in the future if you or your child or children would like to. And the reason for this is for in case there was any sort of medical need to do that, but also from an emotional standpoint, if you were using egg donation and your child or children wanted to know the person from where their biological relationship came from. And on this, in this similar vein, surrogacy really promotes relationships among intended parents and their surrogates. A lot of intended parents have very close relationships with their surrogates and talk, several times a week. Generally, it's phone calls or emails just to keep up with the process because you won't be living in the same city and town as your surrogate does, it really helps so that everyone knows what's going on as far as from the pregnancy process, but it also helps to get to know each other and sort of supports that basis of trust. Circle will also offer you support throughout the process. We have a large social work team that works directly with the surrogates to talk with them about how their journey is going, and also we have program coordinators who work with intended parents to support them as well. Bear with me, I'm just trying to get to the next slide here. Okay. John Weltman is the president and founder of Circle Surrogacy. He started doing surrogacy legal work in 1992. He himself is a two-time father through surrogacy. He has two teenage boys. And Circle as an agency was founded in 1995. John and Circle are both recognized worldwide as having expertise in reproductive law, including surrogacy and international parenting. So a little bit more about the specific programs. The first is just gestational surrogacy, meaning that the intended parents would provide all of the needed biology, both eggs and sperm, to create embryos. However, they require the assistance of a gestational surrogate. What that includes is that we would match you with a surrogate that meets your legal, psychological, and emotional needs. The other is gestational surrogacy with egg donation. We have a vast network of egg donor agencies that we work with, but we also have our own egg donors, and Circle now has about 200 egg donors from you to choose with. So we would then help you to match with an egg donor as well as a surrogate that, again, we focus on legal and emotional needs for that as well. So the process for Circle Surrogacy is, the first process is to have a consultation. Typically consultations are about 2 to 3 hours, and they consist of meeting with someone from the social work team and also someone from the legal team. We want to get to know you during that process, and we want you to get to know us. So we'll talk about your specific needs and discuss more of the specifics of our agency and how it would work for you. After that, if you were to sign on with us, we would start, we would add you to the list for a surrogate and then work towards matching you. And that would include matching you with just a gestational surrogate or an egg donor. And we would also then, after your match, coordinate what we call your journey towards parenthood, and that includes talking with your clinic, helping you arrange travel, doing your contracts for you, as well as handling all the financial aspects of it that go on in terms of helping you to coordinate to pay any medical bills, and also that your surrogate may have, and also to any travel fees and things like that that come up throughout the process. And the last thing is that we would, of course, assist you with any legal work to make sure you're able to bring your child or children home. So some of the basic medical information to go over is that we will assist you in finding an IVF clinic if you don't already have one that you're working with. We have great relationships with several clinics, and we can discuss the different options that they have. As far as from a financial perspective, from a location perspective, we have clinics that we work with both on the East Coast of the United States and on the West Coast. There is also the option of what we call mixing sperm or embryos, which would mean that there would be the option for two intended fathers to both create embryos for a single pregnancy, meaning that you could have twins and the twins would have 2 different biological fathers in the same pregnancy. We also work with intended parents who have already created embryos before their surrogacy match. Or we have what we call fresh transfers, which means that you would have an egg retrieval with either a donor or an intended mother and create the embryos and then have the transfer about 5 days later. So there are several different options there as far as what your current situation is and options of the future as far as the different medical options which may speed up timing towards a pregnancy. As I mentioned before with a twin pregnancy, we do have people who choose to transfer more than 1 embryo. Typically it's 2, unless the physician feels otherwise, and we have a lot of twin pregnancies. There are risks associated with twin pregnancies, including that if one of the embryos were to split and become triplets, or there's increased medical risk because 2 fetuses in a pregnancy just create higher medical risk both for the babies and for the carrier. We have had people who have to make the difficult decision of whether they would like to selectively reduce, and that should be something you're thinking about before you start your journey if you are considering doing IVF transfers with more than 1 embryo. So our surrogates, we have hundreds of women apply every month, and we accept roughly 2% of applicants who apply to be surrogates. The reason why that is that we have really high standards. We focus on women who want to help others who are not doing this for financial reasons. Surrogates have to meet a certain threshold for their own financial background to make sure they're not relying on any funds from surrogacy to provide for their family. We want to make sure they're in a stable environment and that they're coming into this to help others create a family. Some of the requirements that we have that we want to sort of highlight today are, one is the body mass index is no higher than 30, and that is a height to weight proportion that surrogates must meet, and this is one of sort of the health requirements that they have to pass. So surrogates are between 21 and 41. Typically, in my experience, I see surrogates who are in their mid-20s to mid-30s. They have to have given birth to a healthy child within the past 7 years, and that child is also a child who they are raising in their home. So they have children of their own, and that's sort of to help them from a psychological perspective to understand what it's like to give birth to a child that is not their own and how they would feel about that. We do a pretty rigorous psychological screening. Surrogates take a standardized psychological exam called the MMPI. It takes about 3.5 hours. It consists of about 500 questions, and that is done by a licensed psychologist. They also have an in-depth social work screening by our social workers for several hours to sort of talk about who they are, what their background is like, and we also talk to their support staff around them. So whether that is a partner, a spouse, or a family member. In addition, surrogates who apply have to be medically approved. They'll be medically approved by one of our IVF physicians who we work with, and then by your personal IVF physician as well. And of course, they would have to live in a surrogate-friendly state in the United States, and as I mentioned, have the support of family and friends. And of course, our surrogates do not use illegal drugs, smoke cigarettes, or abuse alcohol. A little bit about our egg donors. So a woman can be an egg donor if she's between 20 and 29 years of age. In addition, there are body mass index standards of no higher than 28. Occasionally, we'll go to 30 if it's medically approved. A healthy family history because this would be the biological contributor to your child. So we look more in depth as far as genetics. No use of illegal drugs or cigarettes or alcohol abuse. And we do have an education minimum of a high school degree. And now Dean will talk to you a little bit about the legal work in the United States.
Good evening. My name is Dean Hutchison. As Brian mentioned, I'm an attorney here at Circle Surrogacy. My major focus is I manage the matching process that Stacey mentioned from a legal perspective, and that's just making sure where the carrier lives, the laws fit with what's needed from a German perspective. And I also manage the legal work that goes along with that matching process at the end of the line. So what I'm going to talk about today is a general background on just doing surrogacy in the United States from a legal perspective. I will add a little about the German perspective, but that's why we have Mandy here when I'm done to talk about what exactly is done from a German perspective. Okay. So first, what are the benefits of doing surrogacy in the United States from a legal and actually social perspective? First and foremost, since surrogacy has been practiced here now for well over 20 years, you find a very supportive environment and just a general acceptance of the practice. It's very tough to find hospitals that haven't had surrogate births already. The staff is usually very receptive. When our social workers reach out and our legal team to kind of acknowledge the birth is going to take place and prep the hospital, they try to make rooms available for couples who are doing surrogacy so they can stay on the floor with the carriers and the babies and give you full access during the pregnancy. From a medical perspective, we have some of the best hospitals in the world, and as well as ethically standards for the treatment and the care of not only during the IVF process, but the children born to the surrogacy as well as the surrogate. And it's just, I think the biggest benefit what people find from Europe, as opposed to the other countries where you can do surrogacy, is that every child born here gets U.S. citizenship. So therefore, you're not waiting to get the correct travel documents. You're not stuck waiting for German travel documents. You can actually get a U.S. passport sometimes as quick as 2 to 3 days after the birth of the child. That's a positive. As I was mentioned, from a legal perspective, surrogacy has had good case law for the last 23 years here. Everyone's biggest fear and all the questions I usually get asked are around the topic of what happens if the carrier tries to keep the child. But there's really precedential law from a 1990s decision in California saying that when a gestational carrier has no genetic link to the child, where she signs an agreement prior to getting pregnant that she doesn't want any rights to the child, that she has no rights to that child. We have a 17-year history of close to 700 births where the situation has never happened, but you can rest assured you're on good legal footing in all the states where we practice surrogacy. Circle itself, not only do we have this full journey coordination or program coordination team and social work team, we have a full legal team here as well. We have 6 licensed attorneys on staff. 4 of them work directly in the legal department, coupled with a couple law clerks that work here. We also have 2 attorneys that work in different sections of Circle, but they assist in the process if we need extra legal help. We have a 24/7 hotline here in case any emergency comes up, whether it be from a social work perspective or a legal team perspective. You usually get a call back within a couple hours once we've gotten that call and been able to figure out what the issue is and how to assist you. And really the other thing with our legal team is I would say every single licensed attorney has pretty much spent their entire careers in this field, either with Circle or outside of Circle, but is experienced surrogate attorney or ART law attorney. What we do for all of our couples, no matter where they're from, is we come up with an individual legal plan for them, corresponding to where the state where the carrier is, coupled with the country where the intended parents are from. We have vast expertise in international surrogacy. About 60% of our clients come from overseas, so it's not something that's new to us. So we make sure we're always speaking with the correct attorneys in those countries to make sure we're doing everything correctly as kind of a liaison for our intended parents. From a German perspective, technically the legal work you do in the United States doesn't really matter for German parentage rights. Main thing we need to make sure is that there is a birth certificate that includes the carrier and the biological father, whether it's a same-sex couple or a heterosexual couple. The carrier should be single as well. It makes the process much easier. But we still do the legal work in the United States after we've just established that first birth certificate to make sure we terminate the carrier's rights, and if there's an egg donor, the egg donor's rights, so that from a U.S. perspective, you're fully protected. But then you will also do legal work from a German perspective to protect your parentage rights that way. Many different ways to do the legal work in the United States. We have pre-birth orders, which is simply a court order coming prior to birth, establishing those paternal rights or paternity rights. We have post-birth orders as well, which is very similar to a pre-birth order. There's just some states that either require or allow for the work to be done after a baby is born. And there's some states where you can complete the process by terminating the carrier's rights and adding the other parent's rights through an adoption post-birth. They're usually done very quickly. But again, it's more to protect you from the U.S. perspective than the German perspective. The law that matters is the law where the carrier is from. That's going to be the legal work where we're going to set up to create the parental rights, because that's the state where the birth certificate is created, and that's the state that has what we call jurisdiction over the legal matters. Pretty much you can do surrogacy in about 44 states. There's 6 where we don't take surrogates from. They're listed here. It's Washington State, Washington, D.C., Nebraska, Michigan, New York, and New Jersey. Some of those states have absolute prohibitions on surrogacy. A couple of them just have bad case law in their history where surrogates were given certain rights. So we just do not select surrogates from those states. From a legal perspective, there will also be some agreements that you have to review and sign during the process. First and foremost is your agreement for services with Circle. I think you can see them online, or if you decide to set up for a consultation, we can forward you that agreement. It just establishes the obligations of both sides, both Circles and the intended parents throughout the process. You then usually have an agreement with the IVF clinic you choose. We can assist you in reviewing it, but it's usually a simple document, but we are available to assist. You'll then have a document with your gestational carrier. We would be your attorney of record during that process. We would draft the contract, review it with you, and then once you agree to the terms, send it on to the carrier's attorney. Each carrier will have their own licensed attorney reviewing for them. Usually a very simple process, but it's better protection for all parties if both parties have attorneys during the process. If you need an egg donor, there's also an agreement between the intended parents and the egg donor. Again, we draft it for you, review it with you, and send it on to the egg donor's attorney. Now, as Stacey has mentioned, there's many different options that all have different different price points, and they're just the same way we do individual legal plans. We guide you in which program that you should sign on with Circle. We have what's called unlimited IVF plans. It's usually where one of the IVF clinics we work with has a set firm price where you get unlimited transfers for that certain amount of price. We have gestational surrogacy, which again is just using your own biology with a carrier. Gestational surrogacy with an egg donor, usually for same-sex couples or hetero couples where they need an egg donor. There's a program where some of the IVF clinics have a frozen egg bank, so they have eggs that have already been donated. You can find out about the donor, but it minimizes the prices if you go with a program like that. And then there's actually a Circle egg donation program, which you can use if you're doing a gestational surrogacy, or if you just need an egg donor, we have donors available for your own. So the costs associated with the program, again, are really specific to what program you choose. As put here, they range from $65,000 to $100,000, not including the IVF costs. I won't go into all of them and all the different prices. It's better if you, after today, you want to sign up for a consultation. We can go over the different programs and where the costs come from. You can also, as listed on the screen, you can go to our website and go to the cost page, and you can see the different estimated costs of the different programs. Let's say on average, the total cost for the whole GSED program, which is the full-service program, is about $140,000 to $150,000. But they also range whether or not you need insurance, you have insurance in place, et cetera. So there's just many different factors and variables that go into the cost in the end. But again, if you want to review it first, you can go to our website, or we can set up a call or a consultation at a later date if you want to advance from this stage. So the next topic is insurance, which for the most part is the most foreign to our international clients, because our system here is a lot different than our system in most of Europe, although Germany does have a lot of private insurance. Again, much like legal, much like the programs, we set up an individual insurance plan for all of our clients to the context of, after we consult with you and you decide to sign on, we're going to know exactly what you need from an insurance perspective. For the most part, as long as the German legal work is done correctly during the pregnancy and prior to the birth, German insurance can and will cover any children born in the United States. As long as paternity has been established during the pregnancy, there shouldn't be any issues with covering. We have had clients use it in the past. There's different options for waiting for a carrier who has health insurance that will cover her pregnancy, or there's different companies that offer surrogacy-based maternity insurance that you can purchase for a carrier. Some clients need full insurance, which is their insurance from Germany won't cover a child born in the United States, so they need to put something in place. And you have the option of either purchasing a separate plan for those child in the United States, or sometimes clients work with a carrier whose insurance will not only cover her pregnancy, but will cover any children born based upon the language in her insurance contract. A couple other small pieces of insurance we have put in place to protect all the parties. There's a small complications insurance when you're using an egg donor that protects the egg donor and the carrier during the retrieval and transfer process. It's mandatory to put it in place. It's about $300. There's also a life insurance plan that once the carrier is pregnant is put in place. It's a surrogacy-based life insurance plan, and it protects not only the carrier, it also protects the intended parents from the perspective of certain money that's lost during the pregnancy is sent to both the IPs and the carrier's family. With that said, this is a very general background on the topics. We offer free consultations that are actually divided into two portions. First, you meet with someone from a social work perspective that tells you a lot more in depth about our process, but also finds out questions about yourselves, whether that be how you met, why you want to be parents, your struggles to have children, etc. We also, the next portion of it is a legal consultation. It's with either myself or someone else from the legal department, and it goes more in depth based upon your initial questionnaire onto these three topics of what insurance is best and what you need from an insurance perspective, all the legal concepts involved, particular to your case, and the financial costs associated with the program you're interested in. They roughly last about 2.5 hours. We do them on Skype. We can do them by phone if you don't have Skype, or we are in Europe about every month in a different country. So if you'd rather have something in person, we can set it up while we're in a close-by country. Or some clients come to us in our offices just to meet us in person and have the consult here in our offices. Again, it's more private. It's just yourselves and one of our employees here, so you can ask more private questions during that process. This page just tells you how to set up one of those consults. Very simple. You can go to our website and do it. If you want to wait, I'll keep this screen on the moment while we're setting up Mandy's presentation. But you can contact Bruce Hale, who sets those consults up.
Right now, I'd like to introduce Frank and David, who are parents through Circle Surrogacy, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about their experience pursuing surrogacy here in the United States. So without further ado, Frank and David, you can go ahead and take over, and I guess we're going back to German now. Thanks.
Thanks, Dean. Yes. Guten Abend. Mein Name ist David. Frank ist heute Abend nicht bei uns, weil er noch im Büro ist. Ich habe hier nur noch meine Tochter Isabella, die gerade dabei ist, die man vielleicht im Hintergrund auch manchmal hört, die jetzt gerade 17,5 Monate alt ist, läuft und allen möglichen Unsinn macht. Also wenn ich zwischendurch mal dazwischen gehe, dann bitte mir nicht übel nehmen. Ja, wir haben den Weg mit Circle vor, wann war es denn, vor etwa 3,5 Jahren beschritten, nachdem wir uns relativ ausführlich mit dem Thema Leihmutterschaft befasst haben. Das war ein Prozess, der mehrere Jahre gedauert hat und am Ende dann nach intensiver Recherche 2 Agenturen in die engere Auswahl gezogen haben. Eine ist Circle und dann noch eine andere große Agentur. Die haben wir beide besucht und am Ende, was uns bei Circle am besten gefallen hat im Vergleich zur anderen Agentur, war der Fakt, dass Circle eben, und das wurde eben auch schon gesagt, hauptsächlich mit bekannten Eizellenspenderinnen arbeitet. Man kann die Eizellenspenderinnen also kennenlernen und auch Kontakt mit ihr halten. Das hat verschiedene Vorteile. Zum einen möchte man ja wahrscheinlich wissen, wo das Kind biologisch herkommt. Man möchte dem Kind vielleicht auch später die Möglichkeit eröffnen, die biologische Mutter kennenzulernen. Und dann gibt es noch einen ganz praktischen Gesichtspunkt. Es gibt Erbkrankheiten und so weiter. Wenn Kontakt besteht zwischen der biologischen Mutter und der Familie, dann kann die biologische Mutter bei Kenntnis von solchen Erbkrankheiten beispielsweise die Eltern darauf hinweisen, dass es sowas gibt und dass man da vielleicht irgendwelche Vorkehrungen treffen muss. Bei uns war es damals überhaupt keine Frage, dass wir eine unverheiratete Leihmutter nehmen. Das hat uns Circle auch damals direkt so kommuniziert, dass das für Deutsche absolut notwendig ist. Und deshalb sind wir dem Rat auch gefolgt. Da hat Frau Pecher eben gesagt, dann dauert eben das Matching mit einer potenziellen Leihmutter etwas länger, was ja so ein bisschen einfach an den Kriterien liegt. Wir haben ja schon ein bisschen dazu gehört, zu den Kriterien, und ein wichtiges Kriterium für die Auswahl einer Leihmutter sind ja stabile Familienverhältnisse und dass die persönliche Familienplanung abgeschlossen ist. Das ist natürlich meistens so in verheirateten Beziehungen, wo es mehrere Kinder gibt und man mit dem Mann dieser Kinder zusammenlebt. Und wahrscheinlich auch verheiratet ist. Amerikaner heiraten ja viel früher als Deutsche. Deshalb dauert es eben relativ lange, eine nicht verheiratete Leihmutter zu finden. Bei uns war das dann eine geschiedene Frau, die gematcht wurde mit uns. Und das Ganze hat so etwa ein Jahr gedauert zwischen den ersten Verträgen, also dem Zusammenarbeitsvertrag mit Circle, bis wir dann die Leihmutter hatten. Das Ganze war im Dezember 2010. Kurze Zeit später haben wir dann auch gleich Nägel mit Köpfen gemacht. Im März hat ein Embryotransfer stattgefunden mit einer Eizellenspenderin, die wir über eine Agentur in Amerika gefunden hatten, beziehungsweise es war sogar, glaube ich, eine von Circle, genau. Und im März wurden dann die Embryonen, oder in unserem Fall ein Embryo, in die Leihmutter eingesetzt. Und dann hat das Bangen begonnen, ob das denn nun gefruchtet hat. Die Wahrscheinlichkeit, wenn man nur ein Embryo einsetzt, liegt ja so bei um die 40–45%. Also eine 50-50 Chance, ob es klappt. Bei uns hat es im ersten Anlauf funktioniert. Wir waren schwanger und ja, dann wurde es wirklich spannend. Wir haben gedacht, naja gut, wir sind jetzt das erste Mal Eltern oder werden das erste Mal Eltern, sind ungebunden, soweit, dass wir sehr viel in Amerika waren in der Zeit der Schwangerschaft. Ich glaube, in den 9,5 Monaten der Schwangerschaft war ich alleine 8-mal in den USA. Unsere Leihmutter war an der Westküste. War also ein ordentliches Reiseaufkommen, aber es war auch einfach ganz toll, die Leihmutterschaft oder die Schwangerschaft von vorne bis zum Ende zu verfolgen, zu sehen, wie der Bauch wächst, bei den Ultraschalls dabei zu sein, Zeit mit der Leihmutter zu verbringen. Das war also einfach eine tolle Erfahrung. Hat auch den Nebeneffekt, dass sich eine wahnsinnig enge Freundschaft mit der Leihmutter aufgebaut hat. Die Leihmutter ist nun die Patentante unserer Tochter. Sie war auch zur Taufe natürlich in Deutschland. Wir waren in der Zwischenzeit auch nochmal bei der Leihmutter. Also wir haben uns jetzt in den 17,5 Monaten seit der Geburt jetzt schon wieder 2-mal gesehen. Telefonieren regelmäßig, haben E-Mail-Kontakt und es ist einfach eine super Beziehung. Also ein durchaus gelungener Prozess. Und wo wahrscheinlich die größte Unsicherheit von Seiten der Eltern liegt, ist ja wahrscheinlich immer der rechtliche Aspekt. Und da hat Frau Pecher eben schon einiges zu gesagt und vielleicht möchte ich einfach kurz schildern, wie das bei uns gelaufen ist. Wir haben da vieles von dem gemacht, was Frau Pecher eben auch angeführt hat. Manches haben wir ein bisschen anders gemacht. Da wir eine unverheiratete Leihmutter hatten, konnten wir eben diese Vaterschaftsanerkennung im Vorhinein machen. Da bin ich in dem Falle mit der Leihmutter zusammen im deutschen Konsulat in San Francisco gewesen. Wir haben uns dort als liebendes Elternpaar vorgestellt. Deshalb sind auch überhaupt keine Fragen gekommen, ob das jetzt Leihmutterschaft ist oder nicht. Ich meine, es ist jetzt auch nicht so schwierig. Wir sind da halt einfach zusammen hingegangen, haben die Vaterschaftsanerkennung gemacht, die im Übrigen nicht mal was kostet beim Konsulat, haben die Sorgerechtsteilung gemacht. Die hat dann, glaube ich, 25 € Gebühr gekostet, also völlig einfach der Prozess und hatten somit dann die meisten Sachen erledigt. Wir haben dann zusätzlich eine Pre-Birth Order gemacht in Amerika, die Vaterschaft von mir bestätigt hat. Das hätte man jetzt nicht machen müssen, haben wir aber gemacht. Was auf jeden Fall ganz wichtig ist für die deutschen Behörden später, ist, dass man nicht den Weg geht, der in Amerika in manchen Bundesstaaten möglich ist, dass direkt beide Väter, wenn es dann 2 Väter sind, auf der Geburtsurkunde stehen. Da haben die deutschen Behörden doch ein bisschen Bauchschmerzen, deshalb also nicht eine solche Anordnung vom Gericht treffen lassen, dass gleich beide Väter jetzt in unserem Falle in die Geburtsurkunde eingetragen werden. Wir haben das dann so gemacht, dass dass die Leihmutter drin war und ich war in der Geburtsurkunde drin. Und wir haben sofort nach der Geburt ein amerikanisches Adoptionsverfahren eingeleitet. Wir haben uns gedacht, naja gut, das mit der Stiefkindadoption in Deutschland war zu dem Zeitpunkt 2011/12 noch ein bisschen schwierig und wir wollten da einfach keine Probleme haben. Haben gedacht, in Deutschland dauert das auch alles ewig, sowas wie die Home Study, also wo das Jugendamt nach Hause kommt und solche Sachen macht. Da haben wir uns gedacht, das versuchen wir mal anders zu regeln und das war wahrscheinlich im Endeffekt auch kein schlechter Weg. Wir haben also uns genau darüber erkundigt, was in Deutschland im Rahmen einer Stiefkindadoption passiert. Und das sind ein paar wesentliche Sachen. Zum einen ist es diese Home Study vom Jugendamt. Zum zweiten ist, dass alle gemeinsam bei einem Gerichtstermin erscheinen und aussagen. So. In dem Bundesstaat, wo wir nun waren, in den USA, in Oregon, ist so eine Stiefkindadoption, insbesondere bei Leihmutterschaft, ein Formular, was man ausfüllt, das wird zu Gericht geschickt, die Richterin oder der Richter setzt eine Unterschrift runter und das war's dann. So einfach konnten wir es uns natürlich nicht machen, aber in Amerika lassen Richter mit sich reden. Man hat also der Richterin erklärt, warum wir das Ganze etwas komplizierter brauchen. Wir hatten dann eine Sozialarbeiterin in Amerika, die zu uns nach Hause gekommen ist, wollte ich gerade sagen, ins Hotel gekommen ist, 3-mal und sich mit uns unterhalten hat und die Lebensverhältnisse sich angeschaut hat. Die hat dann einen ausführlichen Bericht geschrieben, dass wir geeignet sind als Eltern, dass wir keine Waffen zu Hause haben, kein Alkoholmissbrauch, kein Drogenmissbrauch vorliegt, dass wir in einer gefestigten, langfristigen Beziehung leben und so weiter. Ja, und dann sind wir vor Gericht erschienen. Das war ein ganz witziger Termin. Da war also die Leihmutter mit ihrem Partner, ihre 3 Kinder waren dabei. mein Partner und ich, unsere neugeborene Tochter, die Anwälte von beiden Seiten und die Richterin. Und so wurden dann nach und nach die Zeugen angehört, also ich, mein Partner, die Leihmutter, die Sozialarbeiterin, die Anwälte haben alle was dazu gesagt und die Richterin hat derweil die ganze Zeit vor ihrem Computer gesessen und im Internet gesurft. Nach etwa 10 Minuten wollte sie das Ganze schon abbrechen und meinte, so, ich setze jetzt meine Unterschrift runter. Und dann hat unser Anwalt gesagt, nein, nein, wir müssen noch mehr Zeugen hören. Das haben wir also alles gemacht. Es wurde am Ende alles unterschrieben von der Richterin. Es wurde ein Gerichtsurteil erstellt, wo das Ganze protokolliert ist, wo der Sozialbericht der Sozialarbeiterin drin ist, wo verschiedene andere Erklärungen drin sind, die also insofern für die deutschen Behörden eine nachvollziehbare eine Nachvollziehbarkeit des Entschlusses bewirken. Ja, damit sind wir dann nach Deutschland zurückgekehrt. Die Einreise, vor der hatten wir dann auch ein bisschen Schiss, weil zu dem Zeitpunkt hatte unser Kind zwar das Recht auf deutsche Staatsbürgerschaft, aber es hatte ja noch keine deutsche Staatsbürgerschaft oder zumindest keinen deutschen Pass. War dann so einfach, dass ich mit meiner Tochter oder mit unserer Tochter im Kinderwagen durch die Passkontrolle gegangen bin, dem Herrn 2 Reisepässe hingelegt habe und der mir einen zurückgab und sagte, ich brauche nur einen Reisepass. Und sagte ich, wollen Sie keinen von meiner Tochter sehen? Sagt er, welche Tochter? Habe ich gesagt, die da unten im Kinderwagen. Ist er aufgestanden und hat geguckt, also ich hätte sie auch völlig schwarz an der Grenze vorbeibringen können. Aber gut, war überhaupt kein Problem, Kind ist eingereist und dann fingen die deutschen Behörden an. Nun wohnen wir hier auf dem Land in Süddeutschland, in einer Kleinstadt mit 4.000 Einwohnern. Von daher war sowieso nicht zu erwarten, dass das Thema, dass wir eine Leihmutterschaft durchgeführt haben, geheim bleibt. Auch vom Standesamt nicht, weil jeder kennt eben jeden. Wir haben also gleich mit offenen Karten gespielt. Die Standesbeamtin war völlig verständnisvoll, fand das alles super, hat sich schlau gemacht, wie wir das machen. 3 Wochen später hatten wir einen deutschen Reisepass. Sie hat mit dem Landgericht in Stuttgart gesprochen, hat die ganzen Sachen geklärt, wie man eine Adoptionsanerkennung macht. Das ist nämlich das Verfahren, was man dann tun muss, wenn man eine solche Adoption macht. In Amerika, man muss das dann in Deutschland anerkennen lassen. Ansonsten ist die rechtliche Situation des Anerkennungsverfahrens noch nicht abgeschlossen, aber da sind eigentlich keine großen Probleme zu erwarten. Die Situation für die deutschen Behörden ist jetzt die, das Kind hat im Moment einen Elternteil, und zwar mich. Die Leihmutter spielt für die Deutschen überhaupt keine Bedeutung oder spielt keine Rolle mehr, weil wir ja eine Geburtsurkunde jetzt haben, die nur noch den einen Elternteil ausweist. Von daher gibt es im Moment nur einen Erziehungsberechtigten. Die ganze Sorgerechtsteilung und sowas war also eigentlich für die Katz, was wir vorher gemacht haben. Aber besser so als anders. Und ja, das Verfahren relativ einfach. Wir sind jetzt auch schon häufiger mit unserer Tochter gereist. Manchmal bekommt man von den Ein- oder Ausreisebeamten komische Fragen gestellt. Es bietet sich dann immer an, die Geburtsurkunde mitzunehmen, die wir ja haben für unsere Tochter, wo und wir beiden als Eltern draufstehen. Aber ansonsten ist das Ganze völlig einfach gelaufen. In unserem Fall und unsere Tochter macht uns einfach wahnsinnig viel Spaß. Und wir sind unglaublich froh, dass wir diesen Prozess durchgezogen haben. Ja. Und ich denke, da gibt es jetzt bestimmt noch viele Fragen und deshalb würde ich jetzt gerne zurückgeben an Circle, würde dann auch auf Englisch umsteigen wollen, damit wir dann die Fragen wieder klären können. So I think we're done now.